so much. I am ready to get started with an incredible conversation, but first I want to introduce our panelists today and have them tell you guys a little bit about themselves. So we'll start with you, Chef Michael.
Hello, my name is Michael Airhart. Grew up in Algill Gardens. I'm a doctor, Michael Chef Airhart. Got my doctorate a little bit over a year, I think, ago, for philanthropist and humanitarian, and also about to be an ambassador of Uganda. In May, I graduate. A little secret I let out, but that's it.
DeeJay Alicia. I am also the founder of Legacy Art Center for Education, which we're going to talk about a little bit later today. So music and philanthropy, and yeah, so that's me.
How's it going? My name is Vince, DJ Vince Adams, and hey family. It's a little surreal to be in this room as a Southsider guy who used to come here on field trips. This was like the library to come to. Anybody born after 1988, you might not know much about libraries, let alone the library to go to. But I was born and raised in South Shore, and this was like the field trip that you made to come to the good library. And for us to be back here now, some 40 plus years later, is pretty amazing. Started off as a bedroom DJ, just a fan of music, and through the encouragement of friends over the years, kind of established a reputation around the country, around the world, for some very just different and innovative things. So I'm sure that we'll dig a little deeper as we go, but it's great to be home here at Carter G. Woodson.
We're going to work with this one mic, so just be a little patient with us today. So let's kick it off. As we discuss this idea of preserving our culture, preserving the culture of house music, preserving its legacy, we're coming out of a pandemic where clubs and certain places, spaces that we used to go to enjoy the music just did not survive. So as we're looking to the future, as we're coming out of this pandemic, what can we do right now in the space that we're in to continue to cultivate and keep this culture alive when there are not too many spaces for us to enjoy the music anymore?
So that's my answer is kind of two-pronged. So in Legacy Art Center, we're going to say LACE. In LACE, one of the facets of the program that I am in charge of, and Danielle is also in charge of a section of LACE as well, is the music. So I am training young girls to try to preserve house music and try to keep house music alive, and teaching them DJ skills. So the event spaces, I think we are still at an advantage because we have the opportunity to rent out spaces, create spaces. We're at the age where we can purchase spaces. So though some of the clubs or lounges or that kind of thing might not have made it, we are privy to any space that we create, you know what I mean, to continue to have those events. So I'm not really worried about them falling off. What about you, Richard?
Here's what I'll say. I have a buddy who's pretty prominent in the music industry, and we were just talking about music in general. And he said, do you know how, and he's a graduate of Kenwood, I'm a graduate of Whitney Young. And he was saying, do you know how wild it is that I have kids that play basketball, and in the layup line, these kids have on headphones where they're listening to their own music in the layup line, whereas when we used to have layup lines back in high school, like it was a sound that was over the school auditorium or over the speakers, and now each of these kids, they're listening to their own soundtrack to the day and just kind of decentralized and disconnected in the same layup line. So I think that one of the simplest solutions is just get back to listening to music together as a family. That was how we all, if you were born before 1979, grew up, where you were listening to what mom was listening to in the car, in the basement, you know, until you got your own stereo, until you got your own car. You listen to what they listened to. So even though we may not have listened to Jackie Wilson or Sam Cooke, we knew who they were. They were part of us. So I'm not even going into the Isley Brothers and, you know, the stuff that we like. You know, we might not have been listening to Sam Cooke and Jackie Wilson, but it wasn't like, who is that? But now these kids are like, who's Stevie Wonder? Or who's, you know, Marvin Gaye? So even outside of house music, we have to start to listen to music together as a family. I think that that is one of the traditions that we've kind of lost just through technology. And I see a buddy of mine, Kim Seed, in the room where, you know, we tease her daughter for dancing with her at my virtual parties. But that impression that's being made now at that age is going to last her for a lifetime. So I think that one of the simplest solutions is just to get back to listening to music in general, black music as a family. And of course, you know, us being house fans, house heads, that will just continue to extend from there.
I'm definitely going to speak on this one. Even what I'm doing today as a advocate against homelessness, house music is a spiritual thing. And if you don't know what that is, if you ain't been touched by that bug, like, I'm a soulful house person, and when it hit that spot, like I'll be cooking, and I throw on some good old soulful house. It gives you a feeling that I remember when I was growing up in the projects, and BMX and Farley was getting on the air, and it'll come on, and GCI, and when that thing say Farley, Jack Masterphone, I went crazy. I'm in there trying to make peanut butter and jelly sandwiches out my mom's back door to feed my friends, and that gave me the motivation. House music, for me, it's not going nowhere. It's more of us getting back, supporting producers, buying their tracks, going to track stores. I buy even music that gives me a little bit, I buy it, because I support all producers. I support house. And house is just something, it's a gospel thing that gives you, when you lost someone, if I'm reaching you could be in the middle of, you just lost someone, and all of a sudden you hit that gospel house song, oh my God. And it's just something about the artist that recreates it and think of more things to do with it. It's not going well. We get back to putting these flyers out again. We get back to, house is a life. It's creative. It's not going nowhere.
Well, I think you bring up an interesting point. We all have very personal connections to the music. We know when we discovered it. We know where we were. The songs bring up memories of our teenage years and young adult years. And as I think about people like my children, my teenagers, and I don't see the same connections that they have. I always tease them, they don't know how to party. You know, everybody sits on the wall, and, you know, everybody's kind of mean mugging. So that spirit that we grew up in, that kind of community where we had a space, young people had a space to come enjoy the music and to connect with other young people. I went to Catholic school in Oak Lawn and had friends all over the city because of the music. Our kids don't have that now. And what I think about is, in addition to providing a safe space for young people, for DJs, producers, and artists, the music also took them off the streets. Yes. Chef Michael, can you kind of expound on your own experiences and how house music kind of brought you into a more positive place, and how we can, as the adults now, encourage our children and encourage other children in the community to do the same, to bring them out of negative spaces into, you know, these positive spaces where there's music and art and education kind of all wrapped into one in a fun way.
So of course I love talking. I'm gonna make it quick. Paul Johnson, rest his soul. I'm still coping with that. We was the best friends as kids when he can walk. I'm from 90th and Aberdeen, Paul from May, Eric Martin, the next block, Racine, Robert Armani on the other side. What saved my life and what gave me hope was, so in them early, I think it was like about the early 80s when that crack hit the scene and kind of took some of our parents. My mom was one of those parents. When I look back, when we finally got out the projects, my grandmother actually came and got us. Cause I think back then, Big Mama was the ones that was taking care of the kids. Your parents, yeah, they were doing their thing, but they always threw us to the grandmas and the granddads. But when I moved from Augill Gardens and got to 90th and Aberdeen, that's when the breakdancing era came. Egyptian Lover and all that good stuff. We literally thought, well, Egyptian Lover was like more like a house track to us. So it gave me, and the thing was, it gave me this, I think that's when I was bit by that bug back then to change my life when I ran into Paul. Because we battled Paul in breakdancing. Paul always used to try to get up on equipment, like try to scratch. And I'm like, what is this? Like, I'm looking at him like, but he would try to scratch. So it kind of changed some things in our mind. But me, out of the group, I wanted to know what selling drugs was, because my mind was more not selling drugs to get these houses or cars. It was giving me more of, if I could sell some drugs, I can do more for the neighborhood. Because at 8 years old, I didn't get a life due to the crack epidemic and different things like that. But it made me think of a lot of things in life. And then when I went back, when Paul passed away, I sat at home and my wife, I had my whole inside reversed. And I started figuring out what saved me and what can we do to save the next generation. And I still, to this day, I'm still a little bit confused, because when I finally got away from the drug selling and the gang banging and different things like that, I told my wife, what is it that God, he have for me? Because why am I still here? Why am I still here? And I didn't have no one to teach me, because the dad wasn't there to teach me to be a man. I taught myself. And I had an older brother. He just recently passed away, and the older brother, I would think he would teach me how to become a man, to do the things. But everybody, if I'm not mistaken, y'all remember the stereo systems that they had in the house back in the day? They had the 45 on top with the little cap that go on the top. I literally taught myself how to DJ on one of those. My mom used to make me play music to her guests in the house with the 45s. So I was a DJ playing 45s in an 8-track. Which, Lord, I mean, it's so much that we can do if we, like this panel here, we need many panels. We need to really talk to the young generation. We may not get them all, but we're gonna get some, because we need to show them what it was to go to Mendel. I'll never forget, I told my wife, I said, babe, I love you. We married. I got to tell you this. I used to cut class at Calumet High School to go to Longwood Academy to dance with Lil Lewis when he came in town, and he had just brought out French Kiss. You had to be there. And I used to go up there, oh my God, we stand out on the corner. I'm talking about, they'd get out of school, they wear their little dress, they go home, change. We stayed till they got back. Went in there, and the best parties in the world taught us as kids. We want to be a part of this. We want to, from the days of Jack Your Body with Steve Zagurley at the Lou Roller Rink, when he came there, oh my God, we thought he was Michael Jackson. These are things that people need to know. Every house is not one person. House is everybody. Everybody got so many stories that need to come out to these kids to see what it's about, because we got generations gonna change. Generations are going to change. You can't stay in the past. You got to build a future. But we can bring, if you go back to them days when I first met Frankie Knuckles and Ron Hardy, I met Ron Hardy on mistake, which he ended up letting Paul DJ at the club. And we was kids. And Paul opened up for Ron Hardy. I'm in there crying because I couldn't believe it that he was opening up for Ron Hardy. If you ever been to a Ron Hardy party, oh my God. Now, the blends and stuff, the blends was all over the place, but when he threw that blend in, you wanted to jump through the wall. So, I mean, we just need to come together and stop being distant from each other and travel and get the city back open to New York and traveling everywhere and bring, cause house music started here.
You know, as we kind of discuss the impact it has on the youth, Alicia, I'm going to ask you, because in addition to, being a DJ, you've mentored even before creating Legacy Arts, even before creating Lace. You've mentored other lady DJs, other female DJs coming up. What are some of the things, can you speak to the importance of mentorship as it relates to continuing and preserving the house music culture?
Mentorship is very important because you need to have someone that you can talk to about your experiences, that have already been through those experiences and can kind of help you maneuver the landmines, because there are a lot of landmines. So when the ladies get together, we have a certain set of things that we talk about that we have to deal with. But also having male mentors who are not easy on you, who are going to give you the absolute truth, who are going to tell you. I had one of my male mentors tell me, take your emotions out of your business. So I had to learn that there's a business side to things, and there's a networking side to things, and there's a building relationship side to things. It's not just DJing. A lot of people can DJ, but a lot of people are not successful because of the way they handle their relationships, because of the way they treat people. One of the first female DJs that reached out to me was Lady D, and she was somebody that I have been watching, Lady D and Lori Branch, because I appreciated the way that they carried themselves. They were always so professional. They're personable. Mm-hmm. You can sit down and have a conversation with either one of them, but they were always so no-nonsense professional when it came to their career. But they weren't arrogant. They weren't, they came in there, they did the party, they had a good time, they spoke to everybody that was there, but they kind of had an air about them and a professionalism about them where you like, these ladies right here, right. So I started watching them when I came to the house music scene. I started watching them in particular in our profession because we get a lot of love from people. You have to remember that DJing is a service. You are providing a service to the people that come to the party. A lot of DJs have it the other way around where they're like, you know, oh, I'm this and I'm that, and the people are coming to, no, not really. You are there to do a good job for the people that you are playing for. So if you come in there and you play a set full of records that you think, you know, are fantastic and the dance floor is empty, you haven't really provided the service that you were paid to provide. It's nice to look at you up there playing records, but so it's you need to take ego out of it, you need to take arrogance out of it, and you need to remember that you're hired because you DJ a party and two people met and they get married. Me and Vince was just talking about that. They met at Vince's party. They fell in love and they got married because of you know what I mean, the atmosphere of the party. It was love. It was, you know, you felt comfortable in meeting somebody and having a good time. You weren't just sitting over there and me mugging that person over there or whatever. So I'm trying to pay forward everything I can. Terry Hunter says, die empty. Yeah. So I'm trying to give everything I can. So when I take my last breath, I can be proud of the legacy that I created.
Vince, I want to talk to you as kind of we look forward. So one of the things that happened during this pandemic is we had to see DJs, artists, and creatives think outside the box in new ways that they have not done before. And you were one of the artists that were able to not only continue your brand, but elevate it and take it to a new level. As we talk about continuing the culture and pushing it forward, can you speak about the importance of taking the music out the club and into corporate spaces and into other spaces that actually increase visibility, not just for you as the artist, but for the music?
So I'll kind of start at the end, which is when people say, well, when things open back up, like, what are you going to do? And the end is that not everybody was in the club to begin with. So if we really think about it, probably in life, 7 to 12%, and of course I'm pulling these numbers out the air, 7 to 12% of the population parties. So that means that most people are not at the party. So if you can take the party, if you can take the event, if you can take the occasion to where people are, you actually have an opportunity to reach more people. And then when things, quote unquote, open back up, the 7 to 12% that were going out, they go back out. But then the 90% that wasn't going out, you've now created a new audience, a new virtual venue, if you will. So kind of starting there from the end, I understood a few things in March of 2020. One, this was not about to be a 4 to 6 week thing. Like, you know, there was a lot of speculation as to what COVID was gonna do. I was like, summer's over. I was like, start planning right now that at least the next 6 months are a wrap. So I had that understanding at that point and had no desire to DJ virtually at all. My mom even gave me a call and she said, why don't you entertain us? And I was like, unless there's a check involved, I don't really do that. I'm just being quite honest. I haven't had equipment set up in my house since 2004. So this is now 2020. I'm like, if I don't go out to where the decks are, it's just not gonna happen. But to be quite honest as well, I saw D Nice. And what I saw was the emotional levity that it created. That's what I saw from the D Nice event, not the 160,000 people on that Saturday and not the, oh, Michelle Obama, oh, Oprah, Janet Jackson. I didn't see that. I saw that people were in a emotional, heavy place, and that this created a certain amount of levity that was very needed at that time. However, unless you were an A or B list celebrity, you were probably not going to be recognized at the D Nice party. And I said, I think I have the ability to reach people, but if you went to Longwood, I can make this your party. If you went to Tuskegee, University of Tuskegee, or if you went to Spelman College, I could make this your party. And I understood how people needed to be spoken to in that moment because we were all separated. And taking the concept that D Nice had and then bringing it into each individual's home, where if I said, where's the south side of Chicago, somebody felt that they were being spoken to in this emotionally uncertain time. Where's everybody in Texas, born in Chicago, which is a whole lot of folks in Houston, Dallas, and other parts of Texas. I understood that there was an opportunity to create this virtual connection among people. So now I'm kind of projecting that to 2022 and beyond. For those who don't know, as Danny shared, I was able to create a series of virtual events for not only myself, not only attendees, but also organizations, companies, and create it where anyone from the comfort of their home, or if they wanted to take their laptop or iPad to a friend's house and create kind of like a cell party where you have multiple cells that are happening at the same time, but everyone's partying or listening to the same thing. I then understood that this is the future of the world. Kind of think about your social organization meetings or your church meetings now that used to be in person in 2019 that went virtual, quote unquote, Zoom in 2020, 2021. They ain't going back to in person now. Those social meetings that you had for those clubs and organizations, everybody's like, well, why don't we just keep this on Zoom? That's what I understood about being able to now create opportunities for organizations and companies that are not in the same geographic region. So if you're an organization from the south suburbs of Chicago, maybe you go back to in person. But if you're the American Black cardiologist who I've DJ'd for, well, you got cardiologists in San Francisco, Washington, D.C., Atlanta. They're like, hey, we're kind of busy now, and it kind of makes sense for us to get together virtually for 4 hours and have a virtual awards ceremony as opposed to now book hotels and blocks of rooms and the other things that we used to do. So taking it to now the future and how this relates to house music is the world's music. If you go to Germany, if you go to Italy, if you go to South Africa, if you go to Argentina, house music is a common thread throughout the entire world. So if you have a sound, if you have a pulse of a certain type of sound, now you can take that sound to companies. And if that's an international company, they might not all like hip hop, they might not all like country, but the 122 beat per minute, 125 beat per minute energy is a worldwide energy. So now that we understand how can we keep this going outside, well, now that people have become used to a virtual existence, it's not that everyone won't fellowship and hug and be in person for certain commemorative events like weddings and birthday parties, but maybe not your 53rd birthday. Your 53rd birthday, it may be, hey, let's just all hop on a Zoom for 90 minutes while you're in California, you're in Kentucky, you're here, and let's party together like we used to for that party. Or if it's Derek, he can't be a day over 55, so I'm gonna say for his 42nd birthday. But my point moreover is that every birthday is not a commemorative year. Same thing with companies. I got a call from SAP, which we know is an international company, and they said, hey, we're having a special Black History event, and we want for music to be at the forefront of that, but SAP is not a predominantly Black company. Well, they saw my 10,000 Steps house music party that I do virtual, and they said, how can we have a virtual event based on dance music? the universal term now that is socially accepted by any organization. Can we do a dance music party similar to what you do, but now targeted to our international organization? So that's just an example of understanding, one, virtual is not going anywhere. Two, house music / dance music is the world's music. There are different applications for how we can take this virtual dynamic that we're not ever going back away from, and the fact that house music will never go anywhere. This has lots of different applications in a lot of different places that each person and each brand has the ability to kind of cultivate, make their own, and adopt and adapt in this new world that we're in.
Thank you, Vince. I love that. That was perfectly said. I want to talk about house music, dance music, and philanthropy. You've done it through your through working with the homeless. You've done it with your organization. What is the importance? I know there's the quote that says, "You can't be what you can't see." What is the importance of bridging that philanthropy along with the love of the music? How do you guys do that?
Well, for myself, just before the pandemic came, I wanted to try something different. I was running it by the wife. So every year we have Taste for the Homeless Summerfest and Winterfest. So when the doctors came up here, my mind has always been about themes. And so I ran it by the wife and I said, so this year's her term. We did a thing where we brought Farley out to Dalton Park. So we brought house music to the homeless. So what we do every year is through one of our partners, which is Chance the Rapper, Social Works. We bus in all of the less fortunate from all of the shelters in Chicago and surrounding suburbs. And just because you're homeless don't mean you're a house head. And I tried something before I brought Farley. Brought Byron Stingley to perform on the stage for the less fortunate and Teresa Griffith. Amazing. I took the video and I said, wow, just because you're homeless don't mean you can't listen or dance to house music. It clicked in. I said, I'm gonna keep this going. So I brought Farley out. When I say it was amazing, it was so amazing that the less fortunate started crying. They all piled up to the stage, and that's when the feelings started coming out, and they were screaming. Before I lost my job, I used to go to the Chosen Few picnic. I used to do this, I used to do that. No, you're still doing it. And it touched my heart to see so many people, because we try to pack, we get 3,000 to 4,000 people in the park. And I just wanted to touch them in a way I was touched when I was young. And it came out of me. And my mind just started rolling. So we came up with these themes like Candyland. We'd take the whole park. That's the wife's new theme we use, and we're gonna take the whole park and we're gonna relive Candyland. You're gonna have vendors all over the park giving out candy, different foods, different things. So it's how can I say it? Because I'm a very emotional person when it comes to less fortunate. I'm very emotional because it's no fame thing for me. It's no being on cameras or the news channels. It's me looking at you as a human being and saying, you can do this. You can beat the drug addiction, the alcohol, whatever you're going through. And if me listening to house music did this for me, it could do it for you. Because and I know I'm kind of behind because I I kind of backed away, not producing music, because when I probably ain't produced my last track about 15 years ago. It was on a track out of France on Flat Lux. But I'm back because the wife just bought me some equipment, and I got a new beat machine, and I got a new studio, and so I'm working on my new album. And so I was just thinking, when she just brought this up, they hit a spot, because we're back full force with Taste for the Homeless Summerfest, which is coming up in June. And I want to always incorporate house. It have to be incorporated in there, doing that work, rather me bringing out, because we're going to add some of the house producers and DJs to come out and help us feed the people. And once we get back, because I'm going to go back into this because I know she's going to probably bring it up about how Taste for the Homeless started and where it came from, what was the mission, and always to keep that touch of house music in there. Because if you guys know, it's a long story. I know y'all know the story about the Farley Jackmaster Funk and the Steve Silk situation and all that. But I literally, and it wasn't planned, but when I brought Farley out, if y'all know Skip is with Push Pack, which was part of SNS, Steve Silk, I ended up inviting both of them out, not knowing that they was gonna come together. They bumped right into each other, and the love was so pure. It was so pure. And the house music and the love and it showed everybody something that was, and I actually recorded it and kept keeping that for some history. And the singing, when Farley just brought out singing the house music to the crowd, he sung "Love Can't Turn Around" live to the less fortunate. It was amazing. It was just something that still gets me today. But the philanthropy part of it was everybody, even from the house DJs and producer, we still have to remember our people and the things we need to do with that music, because that music is touching people, whether you think so or not. Maybe you ain't got pat on the back, I don't know, but we listen. This is my first time meeting Alicia, but so many amazing stories. I knew the day had come. Vince, so many amazing stories. I never got a chance to meet him. So I'm honored, even to be invited to sit here. I put in a little work. I put out some EPs. I got some good recognition, but I never put in like the way y'all put in. And it's so amazing to see that work y'all put and keep the flow going. It's just so ironic. Yes.
Alicia, can you speak to the importance of younger generations being able to see panels like this, people like this, in this music, in this genre, achieving success, not just locally or nationally, but internationally as well?
So, first off, I want to start by saying I love that every sentence he says starts with, "I ran it by my wife." I love that. That's teamwork. That's how it's supposed to be right there. That is teamwork. They are coming together, working on things together. Two genuine people who care about community have come together, and you can accomplish so many things when you got that kind of support behind you on both sides. Seeing people successful. Me and Danny talk about that all the time. We talk about the struggles that we had to go through. Like right now, I'm sitting on the stage as DeeJay Alicia, and Danny's sitting on the stage as the editor at the Defender magazine. Wasn't always that way. We went through some tough times together. We shared the same piece of toast. Right. It was it was tough. But we never gave up. We never gave up. And I think that, like he said, it's a reason why certain people are put in certain positions. When I first started, I spun Steppers music for 16 years. I had some great mentors, and Herb Kent, rest his soul, and Sam Chapman, Steve Breeze. I did that. I loved the music, and it was from me having to play my mom's 45s. So at 26 years old, I was playing doo-wops and dusties for the Steppers, and they was trying to figure out why this little girl was playing these dusties. So I stopped spinning for a little while, and I came back to house music, and I was taken. You know, I listened to, of course, I listened to BMX, I listened to Farley and all the High Mix 5 and all that, KKC, I listened to that, and MV60 even. It was a channel on TV, all music, all the time. That was my station. But it didn't really take me, snatch my soul until like 2010. I went to a party, and the little guy walked in, and he was bopping past me with his little cane go on, and I was like, who's this guy? You know, I don't know him. He got up there, and he played Donna Summer, I Feel Love, and I think it was like the Blues Brothers. Y'all remember the Blues Brothers when he was in church? So the little guy turned out to be Jamie 326. I saw the light, so so I jumped into it. I was like, I want to do this, because I had been to like lounges and, you know, other stuff like that, and the people was just dancing and everything. But this place was dark, and it was fog, and there was lights and shrieks in the darkness. I was like, I want to do this right here. So when I got into it, and I started listening to the music on a different level, I actually went and talked to Kirk Townsend about a non-for-profit. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I just wanted to get a group of DJs together and just do parties like at hospitals and stuff like that, you know, for people in distress. And Kirk was like, well, let me know. Like, he has always been open from the first moment. So, after 8 years of trying to get it together and figure out like what I wanted to pinpoint, and which I'm gonna have to reconfigure now after COVID, everything's different now. I wanted to place myself in a position where I was, so many things have happened over the past year. We got a female vice president. We got the Supreme Court justice. We got the girls need to see what's possible, so they'll know that, you know, you move toward a goal and you can achieve it. So at this point in time, I'm trying to gather together the girls so they can see things on a different level. Me and Danielle actually talked earlier about starting to do stuff like this with panel discussions with females that they can look up to, where we can make it kind of fun, but they can have exposure to, you know, because you can't, there's one person, you can't do it all, but you definitely can network with people. You definitely can get other people involved to make a change and make a difference. Also with young girls, is I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's social media or if it's the images that they feeding us on social media, but it's almost scary. It's almost like we losing our young girls. They don't really highlight like the phenomenal things that girls are doing. We click on Facebook, we see somebody twerking on top of a car, or, you know, it's almost like they're trying to tear us down. So at this point, I think it's imperative that we create spaces where younger kids in general, not even girls, kids can see positive role models and touch them and talk to them and have a connection with them, so that they have people they can look up to and ask questions and get direction from. Anybody you meet in this room can give you some direction about something. You know, you can't walk with anybody that you talk to in this room has knowledge that you do not have. So you need to gain all that knowledge and become what you can do. And I'm trying to get these people, these girls together, so that they can see that the only thing stopping them is pretty much self-doubt, you know, and try to smooth the path to make it easier for them to get to where it is they're trying to go.
I know for me, like I always tell people, I'm considered a baby in this scene because I missed all the 80s. I was in high school. The club was my bedroom, and the radio, that was my club. But when I did get involved, I remember wanting to soak up so much information. I wanted to know what happened in the 80s. I wanted to know what the clubs were like. And I sought out whatever I could. And there would be documentaries and, you know, little radio shows or a podcast here and there that would talk about this time in the 80s. As I've come through this scene, what I've realized, particularly in the Chicago dance scene, it didn't stop there. It has continued to grow and evolve over all of these different levels. From expanding into corporate places, international tours, our DJs are representing at the Grammys, you know, as producers, the nightclub scene, you know, is still very much a thing here. And as a journalist, one of the things I value most is telling our stories and documenting our history. And I need to ask you guys, and I'd like everybody to respond if possible, how do we preserve that? How do we continue to document the history that's happening right now with our scene, with our culture, and protect it from being miscategorized or having that story told from someone else's narrative? How do we, as artists, as participants in this scene, as DJs, how do we protect and document our history and culture? So Vince, can you speak to that, and we'll kind of go around. I picked you out first.
Well, we start by leading, and that's what you did. You have a podcast and a video podcast, and Big Brother D-Lot, you know, Derek and Dewey, Conversations in House. Did I get it right? And then we've got, you know, Lori, what Lori Branch has been doing. And I actually was sitting around one day, and it just occurred to me, this was maybe about 4 weeks into COVID, where I said, and Chef will like this, Steve Hurley has been a big brother to me for many, many years. Some years he didn't know he was my big brother, so I go to Whitney Young, and you know, he decides he wants to hang out at, you know, Whitney Young. This is Steve, wants to hang out at Whitney Young. He went to Lindblom, but the prettiest girls were at Whitney Young, right, Darlene? So, you know, he was like, hey, I'm coming to Whitney Young to hang out. And I'm like, is that Steve Hurley shooting ball at Whitney Young? You know, so this was when I was in high school, but through the years we developed relationship and actually became quite close. And I used to say, Steve, we need to go out and have lunch and have conversations about you know, the scene back in the day when you were, you know, my big brother idol and didn't know who I was. Now we're good friends. We need to just sit down and break bread and just talk about how things were. And I had a thought, and I was like, you know what? The world needs this conversation right now. And this was April of 2020. I said, you know what? I think I'm going to start a podcast and have conversations with all of these great guys that I've got these great relationships with, but now all of us are stuck at home. Folks are gonna watch this. It was like, and so Steve Hurley was my first guest on my show that I had, Voices of House Music, at this time. So I think that people, you know, really taking advantage, and that's not, it has a negative connotation, but taking advantage is just however you want to apply it. But many of us have great relationships, and taking advantage of those relationships, meaning that, you know, you just seize the moment. And it was great for me to have conversations with Steve and then have Farley come on to talk about Steve and, you know, all the different things that happened, you know, during that point. I've always had these forward-thinking thoughts of, you know, like, what can I do that's different? And I knew back in 1998 that there were DJs who were mixtape DJs, and then there were DJs who were house DJs, and some DJs would put their, mixes on cassette, some would put theirs on CD. I said, I want to be the first DJ with a mix CD for hip hop and a mix CD for house music. This is 98. Folks didn't have a CD burner. Like, we have to remember, this is pre, iPod days, where the CD burner was like a 1X or a 2X. Like, it took you 74 minutes to burn a 74-minute CD as opposed to 16X and everything that came. But Dr. Wax and Dwayne pushed more of these CDs around the world. Like, if people were in Chicago for some reason and they were like, what can I get? They were like, well, there's this Vince Adams CD, and then it just kind of grew from there. And, Dwayne was the go-to person in the city. Dwayne and Oscar McMillan, I would say, they were like the go-to guys. If you needed to know what was new and progressive, Dwayne was that guy on the South Side that you have to talk to. So I share that story about my relationship or what happened with Dwayne is, to a great extent, like you said, a lot of us, Alicia was just saying, a lot of us have, capital, knowledge capital, and being able to then have that capital connected with the relationships. That's how the stories get told. That's how the documenting happens. That's how, the history is preserved. So I think those things, telling our story, telling the stories of the people that we're with, connecting, with the people to say, hey, can I tell your story? We all have to take that lead as you did. And, definitely it's been a blessing for me. I'm still uploading those podcasts on Spotify, but they're all available if anyone wants to see the library, because there were quite a few. Darlene was featured on the show as well. It was called Voices in House Music, is called Voices of House Music, and it's on Facebook, and all of those very long interviews with Terry and so many people are there and documented. So that's a part of it, having the knowledge capital, sharing, and then exploiting those relationships. And exploiting and manipulation are not negative words. They are just words. It's how we use them. So we need to exploit things. We need to manipulate. And manipulate can be, hey, I have something great that I can share with you, and here's what we can do together. That it just has a negative connotation. But if we can take, these things that we have access to and take them to the next level, I think that's where it all grows. And then it becomes history for people to know where we came from.
So when I decided that I wanted to transition from steppers and being a mobile jock to strictly house music, first thing that I did as well, Danielle, is that I wanted to learn about the history, the stuff that I missed. Kimmy Disco was like, I got a video I need you to watch. And I'm like, okay, so she sent me this YouTube video, and it was like a 7-part history of house music. And I was watching it and I was excited, and I saw Andre Hatchett. I'm like, hey, I was just sitting next to him in the club. I didn't know who Andre Hatchett was. And I was sitting next to him, talking to him in the club. He was just a nice man that was talking to me at the club. I didn't know any of this, right? So he was talking about the history and Craig Loftus, and I got to about episode 3, and then they were like, and then house music went overseas. And then it was 4 other parts about overseas house music. We stopped. It was we not playing house music no more. We just gave it to them. It's not here anymore. So that question came up in my mind, what? Because I'm at Reynolds on Tuesday. I'm at the Shrine on Sundays. I'm at where's all this documentation and everything at? So I'm glad now that we do have, and when I wanted to see documentation of Ron or Frankie or what, there was nothing I could find where I could watch an actual set or an actual party of these great DJs that pioneered this, that I could get that experience. It's like, if you weren't there, you weren't there. You didn't get it, you missed it. So people used to complain at first when people had their cell phones and they taking pictures and movies and everything at the party. But I think that's actually a good thing, because down the line, when we need to see this documentation or what it was like to be at a party where Lady D spun or Vince Spawn, or, you know, we actually can see all this information on Facebook or, you know, YouTube, or it's readily available. You can Google one of us and see a set that we did. So I think I'm glad with those innovations that now things are more accessible where you can see stuff and document stuff.
Once again, I love talking. She just set something off. I was in the hallway telling him I have some artifacts that'll blow your mind. Cause I like to keep stuff. I have my first turntables. I have the turntable that me, Paul, and Rob DJ'd on. I still have that realistic mixer. I have a tub in my garage. I have Paul headphones. I have a lot of stuff, which takes me back to this. And maybe I'm behind, and maybe y'all could correct me. But where is the museum? Where is the real house music museum in Chicago? We don't have one. If we got Shed Aquarium, we got all this. If we had a museum, an actual, not no go rent a building, an actual house music museum with all this history in it, because I got a friend right now in Markham who still got every plugger on his wall from Bismarck days. Didn't need to be in the museum. You know how many of us have artifacts that need to be, okay, like Egyptian? We need to, where's the museum? Like, can somebody tell me, am I lost or am I crazy? Where is the house? We built this. Chicago built this. You know how many, not just tourists, would come from all over the world to come to our museum, to literally see him standing there? He's here. He's here now. Do we gotta wait till he leave? He's here. I know friends who still got that reel to reel, who used to splice it up and make those baddest mixes in the world. But we need a museum, a real museum. Maybe somebody can put it together.
I'm gonna co-sign that, and I think that issue really relates to Black music, especially Black music created here in Chicago. I am the granddaughter of jazz musicians who performed at the Apollo and Club DeLisa, and we have a ton of artifacts at our house and have searched actively to get original recordings that, because they were in somebody's house when that person died, it went somewhere and we found things on eBay. Yeah. So the idea, and I'm going to be honest with you, in my search to learn more about my grandparents' history, I found people who had foundations in my grandparents' name that didn't look like me, that were from universities and have whole foundations. You can Google it now, that had my entire family history and my family's musical discography, and had my family's home address on the website, even though my family is still in that home to this day. So I think you bring up a great point about creating this ecosystem that allows us, or people like you that have this information. Like Alicia and I said, we were looking to find out what happened. And I'm thinking about my kids. If they ever wanted to know, my mama was always, so enthusiastic about this event and this event, where would they go to find information about it? So I think you bring up a valid point, and I think that's one of the things that is the purpose of today, where they're asking people to bring your artifacts, bring your memorabilia, to create a space and some sort of archive that we do have, if I'm correct. And I think if we expound on that and really kind of get the community and people like us who have enjoyed, I don't know about you, I saved every plugger from the time I was able to go to a party, you know. But I am one of those people like you that I could say late 90s, early 2000s, you know. So I think you bring up a valid point. And I think organizations like this one today are really helping to contribute to that, to the archival process. So I want to open it up. I want to thank our panel for answering my questions, but I wanted to open it up to anyone in our audience who has questions for our panel.
Where do you all see the yourselves in helping curate the young generation to become something like yourselves? You get what if you get what I mean?
Well, first let me start by saying I kidnapped that young man at at Andre Hatch's birthday party. He just happened to be in my vicinity, and we started talking about music and philanthropy and goals. And I was at a party, so I was drinking tequila. So we just had a fabulous time. And he was like, "I'm gonna give you my card, and we'll talk tomorrow." And he has been on it. He came out yesterday. Like, so he's one of those people that I was telling you about. Like when they say that this is what they want to do and this is how they want to move forward, he actually stood on what he says. So I don't have any problem giving him all the time he needs, all the resources he needs, all the everything he needs in order to get to where he's going, as long as he's receptive. So to answer your question, if we can find receptive young adults who are willing to learn, while also respecting the history of it, because young people, they're in the here and now, you know, so they got a lot of information that can move us forward. But we just need people like you, once we mentor people like you, to be the catalyst to bring more and gain more interest. We got like Jay Starr, who I also love to death. He's a perfect example of moving us forward from the younger generation. I have to ask him sometimes, how old are you again? You know, because he's so mature and he's so poised and he's so knowledgeable and professional. So I think as long as we keep corralling in, you know, young people like that, then we'll continue to expand.
You know what I mean? So I think it's kind of a two-way street. It's accessibility. Younger generations have to know that they can come to events Adams. They can come to a DeeJay Alicia. They can come to your event and find out if they want to know, you know, and that our generation is receptive to actually share the information, not just tell them what to do, but to provide a pathway and a roadmap, if you will, to get them involved. Yes.
For teenagers like the ones I teach, called a roadmap to better days, to the how-to. How do you make an app called 10,000 Steps? What's the first step? Because I talk to young people all the time, and it's not that they're not receptive, it's exactly what you just said. They encounter older folks who are not receptive to them, who don't, like, holding it like it's a secret, and it's, if you weren't there, that's it. And then the second part is not willing to say, how did you make something out of nothing? Because I'm in a situation of nothing right now, and there's no venue, there's no club, there's no, if they have access to internet, I'm just being honest, because I've been teaching for like 2 decades, right? So that, I think, I'm just asking if you do something like that, or if you have something that I could share, that we could share with younger people, that's a start of how do I get to a DeeJay Alicia event. What night, I heard about 10,000 Steps, and I was like, that's fantastic. Young people would love that because they're so tuned into social media and their phones and what have you, that you could create a whole new, if it doesn't exist already, a whole new sub community of people under 18, easy. And then just thinking, what's that roadmap to get to you? How did you get there? What was the first thing you did? What was the second thing you did? Like that. So I guess that's what I'm asking.
Part of the beauty of things like this is hearing these stories as a starting point, where you can find, women can look to a DeeJay Alicia, a Lady D, to find out, this is what they dealt with. Oh, this is how Vince created a space and an avenue for something innovative and different. Oh, this is how I combine my love of music with philanthropy and something else that I'm passionate about. I think having more things like this, contacting these organizations that are bringing these artists together, and sharing that information. I think that's the biggest hurdle as a community that we have. We don't share, and it's in our cultural tradition to pass things down. And I don't know if we have done enough of that, our generation. As a journalist, I've heard young journalists feel like they don't get mentorship because we're too busy. I'm too busy trying to climb my ladder. So I think all of us across the board as a culture need to be more conscious of reaching back. It's in our history. It's in our cultural history. Would you guys agree?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I hope that's a starting point.
Me being who I am and me growing up around it and having my auntie and having, all of my family members, be so deep in the house world, it brought me to say, you know what, I'm gonna continue this journey because I want to be a part of it, right? Even though right now I just put on Facebook like the community is small and I love it, but it's not really. It's really, really, really super huge because it's in every country. It's in every city. It's everywhere. So, if anybody wants to network with me, like I'm trying to help build that museum. I want to help, y'all want to help get everything because it's a part of me at this point. And I will die empty because when I die, I want to leave it to somebody else too. So I have business cards if you all want to.